Let's speak about Sunrun, baby! What is happening, investors? It is your boy Jack. I am not a financial advisor. I got the clothing line to prove that fact. And today we are finally making our full video on Sunrun. So, I have been speaking about these guys briefly for a couple of weeks, and I have been doing my research now for a couple of weeks. Also, apologies, I'm not recording on my normal camera. My SD card is broke. I just ordered 2 new ones, but they probably won't get here till Friday, so we'll have to put up with this. But here is a company called Sunrun that, I've been speaking about on the channel for a little while as of late, expressing my interest in. The hint is in the name, Sunrun. They're an American provider of residential solar electricity. So we're looking at the solar industry. And in today's video, there's a few key points I want to speak about. Of course, I want to go through their investor presentation that is from August 2020. I want to speak about this definitive agreement to acquire a company called Vivint Solar and why that's also so important. I want to speak about our financial position and, are we in a good position? I want to speak a little bit about the solar market in general. Is it a growing market? How did 2020 look? How does 2021 and 2022 going forwards look? And I also want to speak about the fact, do I think it's of good value or do I currently think it's overvalued? Because if you go from the bottoms of the yearly chart to the peaks, they were up over 780% before selling off about 35-ish%. So it's been pretty crazy price action in general, and whenever we see this, we always do, have to take a step back and ask ourselves, are we paying too much for the company? And that's what we're going to try and figure out in today's video. I will say from the start though, I don't have a position in these guys yet. I am heavily contemplating opening one relatively soon though. I will of course keep you guys up to date, and if you do want to know exactly when I do buy or sell Sunrun or any other stock, hit that first link in the description, sign up to my Patreon. You get full access to my private Discord, my buy and sell alerts, everything else. Can I please ask you to hit that juicy like button? If you're new around here, please consider hitting that juicy red subscribe button and joining the family of investors. We're like this close to 50,000. And drop me a comment down below. I want to know what you guys think about this company. So with that being said, let's get straight into it. So just so you have a very basic understanding of the company before we get into some of the more detailed information, this is from their investor presentation, Sunrun at a glance. Their mission is to create a planet run by the sun, thus Sunrun. They were founded all the way back in 2007. They're headquartered in San Francisco and they pioneered residential solar service. Okay, so their business model is providing superior power with rooftop solar and battery storage. The average bill savings is 10 to 40%, which is obviously very important. You need to incentivize people to want your solar panels. You need to save the money over a longer term. And they also obviously provide backup during power outages. That's one of the big, selling points of solar energy in general. So their growth, 309,000 customers and installing a new system every 2 minutes. And we're going to get into this later, but again, they've acquired a company called Vivint Solar. We could be looking at over 500,000 customers, but that's for a bit later on. They've sold solar services in 22 states and DC and Puerto Rico, and they have about 4,800 employees as of right now. So very established, very big company in general. 2019 financial performance was good, and later on we'll get into 2020 so far, because obviously this has been a crazy year for every company. But 2019, there was 22% cumulative customer growth. Awesome. Absolutely fantastic. If you can keep that up on a yearly basis, that's going to be incredible. They generated $102 million of cash, which is not the most in the world. And they have 353 million of net present value created. So these do work off of contracts, but of course we'll get into that later on as well. And you'll see that here we provide a superior solar energy service with fixed pricing under 20 or 25 year agreements that generate recurring contracted revenue for multiple decades with an experienced loss rate of about 1%. They have the industry's leading customer acquisition platform, which is very important. We're getting into this market that's been around for a long time, but has really started to explode over the last few years. So being able to get the customers is going to be so important if you want to be one of the big players. But again, if you let me show this from the combination, we can accelerate the transition to clean energy. They're one of the top 3 owners in the US. Look, it's Sunrun, then Tesla, then a company a lot of you will probably know, Next Era. So that's another reason why this acquisition will be so important and playing a role, being able to grow quicker. So here's their value proposition, which again, so important to understand. Why would you or me buy this product? Why would a customer want this product? So their value to customers. Customers on average, as we said, save between 10 to 40% on electricity. We've delivered more than $300 million in savings for our customers so far, okay? And storage provides premium power, including backup capabilities to enable customers to power through storms. So especially in the US, there's been some absolutely devastating storms as of late. Those people with these solars are still going to have their electricity. So value to Sunrun, 20 plus year customer relationship, which can be monetized beyond core solar energy product. Of course, you can upsell, you can have add-ons, etc. 20 plus year value stream is financed upfront to fully cover creation costs and generate cash immediately. So from day one you're making money. And value to society, of course, which I do genuinely think is really, really important. I mean, look at why EV is doing so well, because it's so good for society. Residential solar is a cost-effective way to modernize the country's infrastructure to make it more resilient, affordable, and environmentally sustainable. That's what really needs to be understood here. Now, this is something interesting and something I spent a good bit of time looking into. Sunrun is well positioned even during economic uncertainty, and right now times are very economically uncertain. Demand for Sunrun service should be counter-cyclical because it is a savings product. Consumers are likely to seek ways to save money in a recession. Now, I know it does have upfront costs, so this isn't going to go for somebody who, you know, is just trying to get by. You know, your average family who doesn't have that much disposable income. But I do agree there will be some element of counter-cyclicality to it. So it's a massive under-penetrated market, and as I've looked into the solar market in general, this is something I have seen to be so true. And then all I really have to do is look outside. I mean, there is my window right now. I can see 7 or 8 houses. I see 0 solar panels. If I go through the entirety of my estate, there's probably no solar panels. And I mean, if I drove around the entirety of my town, there's going to be very few solar panels. A lot of people know they're good. A lot of people know they could save money, but they don't have these products yet. And I do think that as the years go on, our CAGR, our compound annual growth rate, will slowly but surely change that fact. So as of right now, there's a 10-year greater than 15% compound annual growth rate in new customer originations, lead to about 13% penetration of US houses. That is a lot of houses. The value proposition will support a much greater number. Now look, let's step away from the investor presentation for a minute, because I know there's a lot of information to be taken in. I want to bring you here to the SEIA, Solar Energy Industries Association. So they provided this Solar Market Insight Report for the 2020 third quarter. So key figures, that's all we need to look through. Look, there is a whole lot of information here. I have read this, it's very interesting, but that's for a different video altogether. But let's just look at some of the key figures, okay? So in Q2 2020, the US solar market installs 3.5 GW of solar PV, down 6% from Q1. So it went down a little bit in general in Q2. Now here's something else, okay? Residential installations were down 23% from Q1 to Q2, due largely to shelter-in-place orders during the initial stages of the Roni. I mean, that's obvious, and that could potentially be an argument to the whole, you know, counter-cyclical point that they have brought up, because we've kind of seen that didn't really happen, let's be honest. But that's not the only reason to invest in this company, obviously. So non-residential installations were down 12% from last quarter and 19% from the same quarter last year, because of the Roni. I mean, it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. But that could be good for us investors, because it could short term lead to a cheaper price. And we're looking at a company that, in my opinion, is still somewhat overvalued in the short term. So seeing things like this in the short term are good for me, because then it'll look even better in the long term when the numbers go back up. Solar accounted for 37% of all new electricity generating capacity added in the US in the first half of 2020, similar to the share of new capacity added in 2019. So not much of a change, which is actually good considering. Wood Mackenzie forecast 37% annual growth in 2020. Now, I've looked at quite a few forecasts for 2020, and pre-Roni, they were all, in general, 20 to 40%. I haven't seen many people make adjustments, so maybe they do think it's going to be an absolute killer second half of the year. We're going to have to wait and see. And that is partially why I'm making this video now, because their Q3 2020 financial results conference call is actually November 5th. It's in 3 days from uploading this video, so it gives you guys some time to go do some research of your own and potentially tune into this call. So in total, the US solar market will install nearly 100 GWDC of solar from 2021 to 2025. 42% more than was installed over the last 5 years. By 2025, 1/5 of new utility PV systems, 1/3 of new residential solar systems, and 1/4 of new non-residential solar systems will be paired with energy storage. So all in all, the next 5 years look absolutely fantastic. Even better without the Roni. The reason I just went through that now is because, yes, I do think this is fair to say that we're looking at a massive under-penetrated market. Yes, it has been penetrated. It has been growing fantastically, but it has a lot more room to grow. And all that information we just went through, you can apply that to any solar stock that you go ahead and do research into in the future anyway. Now, this is something I like to see. Sunrun is the residential market leader, and they have been getting increased market share as the years have gone on, looking at 15% as of 2019. And here we really can see the growth over the years. I mean, every single year we've been getting bigger and bigger. 2017, 180,000 customers. 2019, 285,000 customers. The growth has been immense. And I mean, these guys really do have a genuinely awesome vision. Okay, as we said at the beginning, they want the planet to run on sun. But then they also say here, Sunrun is building not to disrupt, but to displace. They want to completely change the way the world is run. And I actually watched this short video on YouTube by the CEO and co-founder Lynn Jorick herself. And she essentially spoke about, she was living in China, she wanted children, she saw how, dirty the world is, and she wanted to change things. And that falls in line with exactly what they're saying here, They're offering the solutions for these really pressing problems the world has. And to be honest, that the world can't maintain for decades and decades to come. So we can see here a growing cash flow and long-term value. So total cash is this blue number here. And it had been going up. Now total cash had come down a little bit second quarter 2020. We're going to get right into the financials in just a minute or two. Right before that, I just want to remind you guys of this acquisition that we were speaking about earlier and how it puts them in such, and I mean such, a good position going forwards to take over a large percentage of this market. So this transaction is expected to close during the fourth quarter of 2020. Within the next 2 months, my friends. Now that's expected, it may not happen, but you will have to see. Now let's get into some of the numbers from the second quarter 2020, and I want to remind you guys that, this was during very tough market conditions in general. A lot of companies posted relatively bad Q2s, and Sunrun did have a history of posting great quarterly and yearly results for literally more than a decade now. So the first very positive thing to point out is 309,000 customers, an increase of 21% year over year. I wouldn't be surprised if by the time the acquisition goes through and the next quarterly report gets brought out, after our next Q3 one obviously, it's above 500,000, which would be absolutely insane. So net earning assets of $1.6 billion, an increase of 14% year over year. So right off the bat, it all looks very good. Now in the second quarter 2020, megawatts deployed were 78 MW compared to 103 MW in the second quarter of 2019, a 24% year over year decline. So obviously quite a poor decline. Creation cost per watt, 372 compared to 333. 12% year over year increase, again poor. Gross earning assets, okay, were 3.9 billion, actually up 580 million or 18% from the year prior. Very good. And then net earning assets the same, we were up 14% year over year. So cash, including restricted cash, did actually increase 0.4 million from the year prior. But cash generation was negative 30 million in the second quarter of 2020. So total revenue was 181.3 million in the second quarter of 2020, down 23.3 million or 11% from the second quarter of 2019. Now I want to remind you guys, as of right now, we're looking at a market cap at current prices of $6.6 billion. So again, it's coming back to, are we paying too high of a premium as of right now for this company? And you guys know I don't mind paying premiums if I believe it will go up, but during these market times I find it very hard to buy if I don't see really good value. Now, as of June 30th, 2020, we have just over $6 million of assets. Worth recognizing that 4.77 million of those are solar energy systems. Our current assets are only at $638,000, okay? Very worth keeping that in mind. Now, our total liabilities are at 4.312 million, so we're looking absolutely fine. And again, look at this, a very decent portion of those liabilities, just over 2 million worth, is non-resource debt, net of current portion. So funnily enough here, if we look at our revenue, okay, we can see our customer agreements and incentives have actually gone up, okay? They have gone up across the board, but our solar energy systems and product sales have gone down. So all in all, we've made less money. But we understand that. That's why we went through the investor presentation, and that's why we went through, the broader solar market. We understand that energy systems and sales are down considerably for the last quarter, for the last 2 quarters even almost. So I'm not too upset about that, not too worried about that whatsoever, because I do ultimately think that maybe not next quarter, but within 2 quarters, 3 quarters, it will be looking a whole lot better. So loss from operations ultimately for the 3 months ended June was $83,469, which, I mean, given their current asset to liability, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. It's not ideal, but it's fine. And then we can see our cash and restricted cash at the end of the period is at about $354,000. So I mean, all in all, I'm happy with the way these guys are performing, and I'm happy to see the stock price coming down. I'm sorry for all of you guys who are already invested, but I really do want to get into these guys. I wouldn't necessarily say they get me incredibly excited, but I do see some very nice medium to long-term growth potential here. I think absolutely anything could happen over the next month to even 3 months or so. But I do think there are some nice catalysts coming up by the end of the year. That acquisition in particular, a lot of it will already be priced in. That's a large reason of why they shot up in value so much. I mean, July 6th is when this came out. What happened July 6th? Boom! That's when this immense run-up began to happen, really. So obviously, to an extent, that's why the run-up happened, but I'm also sure it just put more people onto Sunrun's radar. More people like me went and did their research, realized it is actually a very nice-looking company. A lot of people obviously ran away with their profits, especially given how uncertain the market is as of right now. And a lot of people will also be worried about, who's going to become the next president of the United States. Will that affect solar? Will it affect the market in general? A lot of people are selling in general. I mean, this is definitely part of a broader market crash. look at what's happened over the last month or so, last couple of weeks in particular. It's been terrible. So I'm not necessarily putting a price target on, okay? I want to see what comes out of our Q3 earnings. I more than likely will not buy before that, just because I think it could go either way, and they could shoot up in value or they could crash down in value. And I also want to see how market sentiment reacts Tuesday and Wednesday after the presidential elections. I want to see, are people going to start buying again, or is this going to get prolonged for a little bit longer? All in all though, guys, I do think it's a very exciting company, and I do think Sunrun has a place in my portfolio, and I do think ultimately I will end up opening a position. It's just a matter of when right now. But guys, hopefully you enjoyed that video, baby. A brand new company, a brand new industry, one we never really went into detail on the channel before. If you did enjoy again, could I please ask you to hit that like button, drop me a comment down below, and subscribe if you're new. We're really trying to get to 50,000. I do think it's a super interesting play. Solar interests me a lot. I definitely do think I'll have solar on my house. And obviously the fact, you know, I believe in green energy. I'm going to have an electric vehicle myself. All of those good things. As I've said a few times on the channel, I believe EV is inevitable. And I also believe to an extent solar is somewhat inevitable. Obviously there are more ways we could go about it, but yeah, you get the picture. But anyway guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day. I will see you for another one very soon. Peace.